Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll make a start. Welcome to all of you in the room and welcome to all of you online. Thank you very much for joining this NHIP Know Your Funder. And today we're going to be talking about doctoral and NIHR doctoral and advanced fellowships. My name is Judith Rankin. I'm Professor of Maternal and Child Health here in the Population Health Sciences Institute at Newcastle University. I'm also Dean of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, and I'm also the overall chair for the NIHR Doctoral Fellowship Panel. So I have seen, as others in the room have seen, many of these applications. And also I did previously hold an NIHR Public Health Career Scientist, so I've been on both sides. I've prepared applications and I've read all the applications. So what I hope to do today is not give you absolutely every single detail about the programs. I will touch on that because a lot of that information is in the website, but I have put the detail in the slides and these will be circulated to you. But what I hope to do is just to give you some thoughts from me, but also from my colleague, Professor Eileen Kaner, who is the chair of the NIHR Advanced Fellowship Panel, on what we think makes a successful application. If people don't mind, I think it might be easier if I just kind of get through what I want to say and then we have questions. But obviously if there's something burning that you think you might lose, do either put it in the chat, and we've got Amy monitoring the chat, or just ask. But if that's okay with you, we'll get through. It's decided to block again. Oh, right. Okay, so just thought I would remind you, this session is particularly around the NIHR as a funder, the National Institute of Health and Care Research, whose mission is to improve the health and wealth of the nation through research. And within that mission, they've got 6 areas that they focus on, from funding and supporting high quality research, to engaging and involving patient care in the public, to attracting, training and supporting the best researchers, investing in world-class infrastructure and skill delivery workforce, partnering with public funders, charities and industry, and funding applied global health research and training. And it is this aspect of the attracting, training, supporting the best researchers that the fellowships would fall under. And within that, the NHIP Academy helps to develop and coordinate academic training, career development, and research capacity development, manage national competitions, attract, train and support people conducting leading edge research, and develop the skills of the next generation of health and care researchers. So there are a number of different programs that the NIHR run. For the purposes of today, it's really this the second column in from the left, which got the green text that we're interested in today. So that's the personal fellowships. Before I get going to talking specifically about the doctoral and advanced fellowships, I thought you might like to see this slide, which was presented last year. So it's pretty much up to date. But it does show the personal awards by professional background here on the left-hand side. There is a little bit of a misnomer around these fellowships that are only for medical and dental applicants, which isn't the case. And I hope by showing this, you can see that actually a number of different people from different professional backgrounds have been supported through the personal fellowship scheme. And then in terms of just looking at Newcastle, we have had a lot of success with fellowships. So applying from Newcastle, you're already in really in an institution that is really well regarded in terms of the support that we provide for fellows. Okay, so this is just a reminder about the remit for the personal awards. So the NIHR remit is for early translational clinical and applied health research and social care research. And I really want to emphasize that social care research because that's something that is fairly new over the last probably year to 18 months. The proposals must have a clear potential for directly benefiting patients or service users, carers and the public. They can involve all of those, patients, carers, etc. Or you can involve samples from individuals or data, secondary, maybe you're doing secondary analysis, so you have data already that you can use. People who are not patients or service users, you can use product involved health technology assessment or health and care services research. I think the important distinction to make between the doctoral level and the postdoctoral level is that the doctoral level is interested in, that isn't within remit to do early translational research, but early translational research is within remit for the postdoc or advanced fellowships. I'm sure you all know, but it's really worth reminding you that NIHR does not support basic research or work involving animals or their tissue. But the NIHR will support educational research and methodological research as long as you can show the potential for that practical application and how it will benefit patients and carers and the public. So that sort of trajectory must be clear. So that's the remit, and I'm going to come back to this, but I think it's really important just to spend some time actually understanding who your funder is, and that's not just for these fellowships, but anything that you're going for, what's within remit and what's out of remit, because you could waste an awful lot of your time on an application that from the screening stage isn't going to get any further. So do make yourself very familiar with the remit. Okay, so I'll now say something about the doctoral fellowship criteria and the advanced fellowship criteria. So as you might expect, the doctoral fellowship is all about funding you to undertake a PhD. The majority of the funding goes in an open call to the community for these fellowships, but there have been some strategic themed calls as well. Open to clinical social care practice applicants who, well, all applicants, but for those particular applicants, they can include 20% clinical or practice time. So that's very much accepted within your application. You can spend 3 years at 100% doing this work, or you can spend longer at a lower WT full-time equivalent. And of course, they pay your research costs, your PPI costs, your training program, conference-related costs, and importantly, your PhD fees. So that's all covered by the doctoral fellowship. The main assessment criteria is that they want to see that you're committed to your area of research and you do have the potential to be a future leader. And I really can't emphasize that enough. This is all about supporting the future research leaders. They expect your research to be of high quality, of course, and similarly with your training program, and I'm going to say a lot more about both of those. At the doctoral level, obviously, they look very closely at who's supporting you, so who's making up the supervisory team, are they the right people and have they got the right experience, and where are you planning to do this, and is it the right organisation for you? Quite over the last couple of years at the doctoral level, we've also introduced what's called charity partnership fellowships. So this is where the NIHR has partnered with some charities, examples given here, to fund a particular fellowship. And the advantage of that is actually you get support from both funders and you're part of both communities supporting your fellowship. So, I mean, obviously, if your work doesn't fall within one of the current partners, then this doesn't apply, but just to emphasize that that has happened. Okay, so that was the doctoral level fellowship. Now for the advanced fellowship. So really, these are designed to support early postdoc careers. So it could be almost quite immediate after your award of your PhD, right through to those who've got quite experienced postdoc careers. The idea behind it is that they support you, this fellowship would support you towards independence, or they can be used as a transition or a return from a career break. Again, similarly, there is time built into these fellowships for those who would like to continue with clinical or practice time. In this case, it's up to 40%. In the doctoral case, it's up to 20%. Again, response mode, funding, but there can be strategic things there. So the funding is between 2 and 5 years. Again, you can spend all of your time doing it, or you can spend part of your time doing it over longer. And similarly, the funding from your salary, research costs. In this case, you can actually put funding in for support costs as well, and that could be like bits of people to support you. And you've got confidence-related costs. And I think they really, since about 2 years ago, they changed the advanced fellowships to be, there used to be 2 schemes and now there's 1 within it, but you can apply for 2 within. So if you, for example, if you wanted to apply straight after being your PhD, you could then apply again, which became more advanced, as long as you don't go beyond a total of 8 years postdoc experience. In this case, again, the criteria is about that trajectory. Are you going to be the future leader in your field, high quality research and training? And this time, rather than supervisors per se, it's about who's mentoring you and then the host organisation. All right, just a few words on process. So for both of these schemes, they are launched twice a year, usually in April and October. So you can go 6 months. Used to be that it was only 1 call a year. So making that decision, if you didn't quite think your application was ready, was a lot more difficult because you would have had to wait for a full year to apply again. Whereas now it would be in 6 months. Again, a change over the last sort of 18 months is that you can now only apply twice to these. So if you apply once and you're not successful, you can apply again, but then that would be your last opportunity. And I put that in because I think it really, really is something you need to think very carefully about. Is your application ready? Could spending another 6 months actually just make it go from great to fantastic, remembering how competitive these fellowships are. In terms of the doctoral fellowship applications are reviewed by 3 panel members. They don't go out to external review. We have a very, very large community of reviewers within our panels. But at the advanced level, the applications are sent out. There is a first layer of screening that's done. So if that's really an eligibility check that's taken that the NIHR Academy staff do. And then after that, you go on through the process. You'll be notified if you're shortlisted and then invited to interview, and I'll talk a little bit more about the interview. At the doctoral level, well, both level, these are interviews with the panels, so there could be anything between 10, 15 people in the room. Some of those will be on the panel itself, others will be observers, and maybe they're from different research design services, etc. But you need to prepare yourself for a lot of people staring at you, which is why NHIP and others do mock interviews, etc. So don't panic about it. It is a panel interview. The first interviewer tends to focus on the project and ask you can be very detailed questions about your project. The second interviewer tends to focus more on the training side of it and your supervisors, stroke mentors. And then it's opened up to the rest of the panel, and anybody can come in and ask a question. So you could be asked anything about your application. So just to bear that in mind. Then the panel will make their recommendations for funding. The panels don't fund anything, they make their recommendations. That goes to the DHSC, Department of Health and Social Care, and then they will approve or not. So it does actually take quite some time to get the outcome, and I know that's incredibly frustrating, but it's not because nothing is happening, it's because it does have to go through this process of approval. Okay, so that's a little bit about the process. Okay, so now I'm going to start going into the sort of different parts of the application and talk to you a little bit about what the panel's looking for. It used to be that we talked about the 3 Ps when we were talking about fellowship applications, so that would be person, project, place. We now talk about 5 Ps because patient and public involvement has become, as you'll appreciate, massive now within NHR. And the 5th P that I've put in there is about preparation. And again, I can't emphasize enough how much preparation you need to do. not only just to get going on your application, but preparing for interview, etc. Okay, so let's first talk about the person, so you as the applicant, and your potential to become a research leader in your field. How are you going to demonstrate that you're on that trajectory? So what is it about you and that you can convince the panel that you're the right person and that you will be the leader of that field in 5-10 years time, depending on what level you're going for? What's the evidence that they're looking for? Well, clearly there's the usual things of publications and grants. There's also things about invitations to conferences or workshops, and it's about any awards or prizes, anything that kind of sets you out maybe a bit from the crowd is what they're interested in. And obviously for the 2 levels, the amount of publications, etc., at doctoral level, we do like to see that applicants maybe have some publications. You don't have to have hundreds, just some, and that they started to think about funding. So you might have small funding, maybe a few £100 or £1,000, it's whatever, to show that you're actually starting to understand the research process and how you do research. Obviously, when you come to the advanced level, you would be expected to have more of all of those things. And at either level, it's all about what collaborations have you already started to make, what's your network look like, and again, and I will keep repeating, I'll say this one, everything is just more of at the advanced level. But show what you've done, how you've initiated them, what wouldn't have happened without you initiating it, etc. And for the advanced level, they're also looking to see how you are already starting to support capacity building. So how are you supporting other researchers? And that could be about supervising student projects. It could be about supervising specialty registrars or something. There's lots of different ways that you can show that you're starting to develop other researchers. And the thing that you really must emphasize is how is this fellowship going to be that step change in your career that you need? So how is it going to sort of take you to the next level? So obviously this isn't all exhaustive. These are just ideas and thoughts that you should be thinking about when you're preparing it. In terms of your projects, clearly it needs to be relevant to the level that you're applying for. So usually the doctoral fellowship could be a single project with multiple phases. That's kind of usual of what we get. Advanced might tend to be more interlinked, more advanced types of, or a program like research program. And obviously the higher you get, the more extensive your program of research becomes. Obviously your research question needs to be answerable. It needs to be obvious how you're progressing the science, even if it's incremental. But you don't want to set something up that is, with all the best intentions in the world, there's just absolutely no chance you can answer it. What are the methods that you're using? Are they the most appropriate for what you're trying to answer? Have you involved patient and public service users from the beginning? Are they involved? Are they helping you shape your research idea? Is your project idea feasible and ethical? And again, these are really important considerations that you have to include. And what are the other current studies in the area? You know, is there another group or another person who might be doing very similar work? And now that's not to say that you don't continue with what you do, but you reach out to them, you talk to them, you identify what the gap still is that you could then lead on. So it's giving them a sense that you really are connected to your field and that you know what is going on already and how you're positioning your research to answer a research gap that has not been already done by another group. Okay, so the third P is place. So this is the host organisation that you plan to hold your fellowship in. And again, the panel will be looking to say, is this the right place for you? And you need to, there's a job of work for you to do in terms of convincing the panel that it is the right place for you. Sometimes, and this goes into the training plan, but sometimes you are based in one place, obviously, but you could have a placement somewhere else during the course of your fellowship. And that's a really good way of showing your externality, that you're sort of going to learn whatever from other people as well. Your supervisors and mentors are looked at very carefully, because obviously we want to make sure that the fellow is well supported, whether it's at doctoral level or whether it's at advanced level. And I think we've moved away from this, but I do still see it in some applications. This isn't about putting prof, sir, person, or prof, the person in. If they are the right person and they can give you the time, great. This isn't about just putting a name in there for the sake of it. The panel will really want to see how that person or that team is committed to supporting you. So if you've got somebody who's already got 15 PhD students, for example, if it's the doctoral level, well, realistically, they're not going to be able to give you an awful lot of time. So think about that when you're thinking about your supervisors. It's not just the expertise they bring in terms of their research area, it's their expertise in terms of supervising and what time they have available to them. Are you covering all the methods, for example, that you need? You know, if you've got a big work strand that's around health economics and you haven't got health economics as a person as a supervisor, well, the panel is going to question that and come back to that. That isn't, it would be good to reach out and make sure you have that. And it's not, you don't have to have supervisors or mentors from the same institution. In fact, I'd really encourage you to have not only people locally, but also people who are working at other institutions, so you do get that externality in your approach and in what you're doing. More and more it's being based now on the host institution statement at the end of the application, so that's whether it's advanced or doctoral. So we're very much moving away from generic statements that just say we're brilliant. You know, because obviously all of the other institutions are going to say that, but it's what are they doing? How does your work fit into the overall strategy of the department that you're going to be in, or the institute, or whatever it is? But also what's the department or institute going to do to support you? So you need to be working and writing that with somebody who you can, you know, you really work out how it is. This can be a really mutually beneficial relationship. All right, so the next area is around the training program. As I said at the beginning, these are training fellowships. So we want to see an ambitious training program that will support you and help you get to that next stage of your career, but also around developing you and the methods that you want to use. So I often refer to VTI's researcher development framework, and there are many other frameworks you can use to help you do that, really that self-reflection and what it is that you need in terms of your own personal development, but also methods development. And then you build your training program around that. What do you need? What does your project need? Might a research visit to a collaborator be possible? And absolutely understand that for many people that may not be possible, or you could do some very short placements. But it's something to think about. The courses that you've selected, you know, do know what the content of the courses are. Are they going to meet the needs that you have? I have been in a situation where somebody said, you know, module 2 of this course doesn't look like it's relevant to you. And, you know, obviously the candidate is quite floored by that. So do appreciate you're not just signing up to the course, what is the content of that course as well. And then we've already mentioned sort of your own personal development in terms of leadership and management. Okay. The next area I wanted to say a little bit about is patient and public involvement. This is something that has grown, as you will all appreciate, over the last couple of years, and it's taken very seriously by the panels. And the panels, whether you're at doctoral level or whether you're advanced, will have a PPI representative, well, 2 usually on the panel, and they're always given time to ask questions. So PPI involvement should be right from the beginning. So when you do think, right, I'm going to go for a fellowship and my research idea will be around whatever X, you should be starting to engage and be talking to your PPI members throughout. so that it's clear that this is meaningful, this is actually helping you to shape what it is that you want to do, and not coming across as tokenistic. I do think we're not there yet, but we are moved away from sort of tokenistic. I'll talk to two people and then I'll do my own work. It's really important that you show how PPI involvement has actually influenced your project. So what are you doing now that you weren't doing because you've had those discussions? They'd really like to see examples of how you've helped shape it based on that involvement. And I've just underlined public there because this isn't just about patients, this is about public members as well and how you're engaging with those patient and public. And it's really important that you think about what the training needs might be for your PPI members who become part of your team, or if you've got an advisory group, what's their training, or if they're involved in different aspects of your work, so they might be involved in some analysis, what training is it that they need? And you need to include that. But also, what training do you need as a fellow? There may be, some aspects of this that you still don't feel very clear about. There's lots of, there are some PPI courses like that you could include in your training program. And then absolutely cost this as you should cost it. So any PPI member should be reimbursed for their involvement. And I put the link up to the guidance. And again, we do look and make sure that costs have been included. I just wanted to say something on equality, diversity and inclusion. So NIHR did publish their strategy last year, and they've got these 5 elements to it. It's really important that you think about EDI when you're designing your own research as well, and how you're going to make sure that you, as far as possible, using many different approaches, can increase the diversity of if you're recruiting, for example, that your sample would be highly diverse. And that's, we would be challenging you to think outside of the box in this. This isn't about, just relying on the usual ways we might have done up until recently. This is about challenging you to think really carefully about that. Okay, so I said I put each of these 5 Ps are important, but I think you can you can help yourself spend proper time preparing for all aspects of this. So go on to the website, know what it is that they want. There's very clear guidance that's published every round. Make sure you're very clear about the guidance and the eligibility. You do not want to be putting something forward that's going to fall at the first hurdle. Contact the program managers. They are incredibly lovely and incredibly helpful. So don't be put off by picking up the phone or emailing them and asking for advice. Contact the NHIP, contact the research design. So there's plenty of people there to help you. You shouldn't be doing this on your own. Reach out to people, get that support, talk to previous applicants, successful. And I would also suggest those who maybe haven't been successful to do that learning together about what it was that maybe haven't quite worked the first time. Start your PPI early, we've just talked about that. Know your audience. So this is about, you're writing for quite a general, in the doctoral level, it would be a panel with many different disciplines are represented. For the advanced level, as well as the panel, you've got to convince external reviewers. So, and you've got lay members in terms of the PPI. So you don't want to write a really technical application that people can't understand. Likewise, you don't want to make it so untechnical that people don't think you know what you're doing. So it's quite a thing to actually get to a level where you're writing in a way that everybody can understand what it is you're doing. And then talk to people and talk to people and talk to people. In my experience, those who've gone through this process are always very happy to share applications, to talk to you about their experience, because they were in your position to start with and then got a lot of support. So do talk to people. Previous, and not necessarily just previous award holders from your own institution, talk to other people outside of that. There's a lot in the form about finance and things like that. So you've got a lot of different people that you're going to need to engage with through this whole process. Okay. And then I've already mentioned that there's an interview. So you do the application, you get through the eligibility check, great. You get into the review, you're shortlisted, fantastic. Now you've got the interview to prepare for. And I think the first, we can do this ahead of one of the first things to do is to look at the selection panels. The members of the selection panels are all published on the website. This isn't, anything behind a closed door. And you can hazard a pretty good guess about who might be maybe the lead panel member. So we tend to try and make sure that there's a topic expert and a methods expert. But clearly things can change. Somebody can't go to the interview on the day because they're ill, but you can see the composition of the panel and who might be nearest to you in terms of expertise, in terms of the topic area. Mock interviews, I remember my mock interview to this day. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, especially because when you know people, it's harder, but not necessarily being in that situation at all. And everybody says the mock interview was worse than the actual interview, and that is the case. But the value of doing that was just huge. So even though it may make you feel very uncomfortable, it's worth it. And I think we still do film, video them.
Yes, we can do.
But that video is just for you. Nobody else is going to watch it, but it just helps you to see, well, how did I come across? How did I answer that? So honestly, we can't recommend enough doing mock interviews. Think about the question, what would you ask? If you were at the other side of the table, what would you ask about this project? What would you ask about this person? And start thinking through questions. And with your supervisors or mentors, you can rehearse specific questions. If there's an area you're a little bit unsure about, well, practice potential answers for that area. You may be asked, there may be if you're doing 3 work packages or whatever, there may be a work package that has the potential, even though you'll try your best, not to go exactly as you plan. So if that were to be the case, what would you do? What would plan B be? And the panel's not there they're there to hear, what are you thinking on your feet? What's the potential? If we were to invest all this money in that work package didn't work, what would you do instead? How would you spend your time? You're not just going to sit and twiddle your thumbs. So they may push you a bit in terms of some of the actual work packages. Some people are incredibly good at selling themselves. I'm not one of those people. So, but this is an occasion where I'm afraid you have to just go in and absolutely sell yourself. Because if you don't, there are other people queuing outside to come in and be interviewed. And as I said at the beginning, these are highly, highly competitive. You've all got amazing skills. Make sure those come across in your answers, obviously to appropriate questions, but it's worth thinking about that in advance. What have I got that maybe others don't? What would stand me out? What do I want to make sure I get across? And I remember a piece of advice from Dave preparing for this was have 10 things that in the course of the interview you absolutely want to make sure that you say. And that could be about you, it could be a project, it could be you're trying to make so mentally, at some point I'm getting these points out because they're really good. And be enthusiastic, look like you're enjoying it, look like you're passionate about your project. You can smile. I wouldn't crack jokes, they don't work. I mean, if there is an appropriate, if something happens, like often the technology might have something like go and you can have a bit of a laugh. But the panel member are all human, we're all there and we've been sat there all day. So actually, if somebody smiles at us, we're really happy. Oh, great. And the panel's not there to ask trick questions. We're there, we are desperate to spend NIHR's money. So, but obviously there is a bar above which you need to get so that we are confident as we can be that recognizing you for funds it would be successful from an NIHR point of view. So it isn't about trick questions, but it's about trying to make sure you get all those important points across that will convince the panel that your project and your training path, everything is just well designed and well worked through. Okay. I can race through some common weaknesses. Shall I do that and then we'll take questions? So this will be quite rushed. Well, I'm not sure what time we'll be. All right, so talked about the remit. So if you don't show that your remit will have direct benefit to patients or the public, then that's not going to be an NIHR application might be very relevant for another funder, but it's not NIHR. Clarity and around your research questions, and that your aims and objectives link to your research question. And often there's just not enough detail to help the panel understand exactly what it is you want to do. Or your research program isn't at the right level, so it's far too ambitious for a doctoral fellowship, for example. Remembering you've also got an ambitious training program, and you've also got to write a thesis, which I think quite a few people sometimes forget that they've still got to produce a thesis at the end of it. Not achievable with its time frame, or too high risk. Now, on the advanced level, I think actually a little bit of risk is what you want. I would say for the doctoral, you want an ambitious novel, but you want it to be fairly well worked out and contained. Again, make sure you're applying at the right level in terms of everything we talked about, your research publications, your grants, your conferences, etc. A common problem is that these fellowships can read like a project grant. So maybe a project grant's being turned down by another funder, and they said, oh, we've got this great person, we'll just stick it in as a fellowship application. We can read through that. This really is about training personal training fellowships. And this is all about you. So we are all naturally very collaborative. We talk about we and the team, but this is about what I do, what wouldn't happen if I hadn't done something, etc. Obviously, you're being steered and guided by your supervisors or your mentors. This has to be driven by you. It has to be clear in the application that it is. In terms of the training program, the biggest pitfall people fall into is they make it too generic. So they say they'll just do that course and that course from the host university. What you really have to show is that you've thought much more broadly than that. So word that I've used often is training is too pedestrian, so it's not wide-reaching, it's not ambitious. So don't spend so much time on the other parts of the application and then quickly put some training program together, because again, that's not going to work. I sort of mentioned this before, the supervisory team, they need to have obviously provide you with the right expertise, but they also need, if it's a doctoral level, they need the supervisory experience. They need to bring commitment to them, so to you as an applicant. So again, not somebody who's clearly overstretched already. And the environment, again, we've talked about the host department and what they're strong at, how they support fellows, and how they will support you as an individual in your research program. Value for money, clearly NIHR are looking for value for money, especially in the current situation. But as long as you justify why you're asking for something, they will, if that's integral to your research program or to you and your development, then it will be paid for, but you must provide that justification. All right, so I'm just going to try and pull all of that together, and then we'll move into questions. So key thing is to start early if you want to go for one of these fellowships. And I talk to people about 12 months, a year before the deadline that you might want to go for. And people look at this as I'm absolutely crazy, but you've got to put all the building blocks in. You've got to have those conversations with your PPI. You've got to get the right supervisors involved. You've got to start developing your network. And this all takes time, and you're all busy people anyway. And on top of that, you're trying to do this fellowship application. So start early. Know and adhere to the criteria and the guidelines. Make the NIHR website your best friend, or talk to the program managers. Do all of that homework. Speak to other people, get criticism. Constructive criticism is really welcome, and you would rather hear it from your colleagues than get the feedback from the panels. From experts and non-experts, show that it's your own work, emphasising personal training fellowships, not project grant. The training fellowships are really key in that training programme. We are absolutely looking for the future research leaders, so help us to be convinced that you are one of those. And pay attention to detail and how you present the application. So a lot of people do all this other work, and then there's typos all over the place, things aren't formatted properly, page numbers, it's just a mess. And if you're a reviewer or a panel member, you're sifting through lots and lots of applications that you've got to do reviews on. Don't give a reviewer, something to get cross about early on and no reading of your application. So do give yourself time to do that final proofread, read across the application, make sure things are consistent as well. I've written a blog, horrible photograph, I've written a blog, just summarising some of this stuff. I've put the link in case people find it helpful. I've put in some other links just in terms of to selection committees. So some of the webinars, there are already some really good webinars about, and some little case histories about people who've applied. So and then that's my email. I'm very happy to talk to anyone who is thinking about this and advise in any way I can. So that's me.
Can I chip into more weaknesses?
Please do, Dave.
Having done a lot of this over the years, couldn't agree more about the sloppiness, okay? It really irritates reviewers. So spelling, typos, punctuation, get somebody else to read it. That doesn't make sense to them, all of that. Classic trap is you end up tweaking the science, forget to change the abstract. So you've had a project where the abstract no longer refers to what you're actually planning to do. And I just think sloppy presentation equals sloppy science. So the next one is don't blag it. People who put down, they set up a website, or an app or something like that, and it invites people on the panel just to check that link. I check them always, 50% of the time they don't exist, okay? So you're fibbing to me, so that's not going to go very well. And remember, people in this day and age will have their computers, and so if you make a controversial statement about this particular paper shows that my work is justified, expect somebody to read it in real time during the interview, so you cannot blag it. In the old days you could, when people wouldn't have the access to the resources they do. Biggest mistake I see in all applications always is you don't tell me why this matters and is interesting. If you can't tell me why it matters, why should I go to the effort of working out why it matters? So leave absolutely nothing on the bench in terms of why this other matter. And then the other one goes to the fit to the remit. We used to see genetics type projects which had clearly gone to the Wellcome Trust, and then they've just been sent to NIHR, and it's a complete mismatch between what the funder wants to see and the type of science. It's perfectly good science, it's completely out of remit. So NIHR in particular, it's got to be an application that is appropriate for NIHR, and I couldn't agree more. These are not a project grant with a CV on it. It is much, 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 much more important than that. And panels are very good at spotting when people are fronting up somebody else's application. Very good indeed. So just get somebody to read it, if it interests them, but you sometimes see, people read a lot of these things, and you see enormous, dense text with tiny figures in it, and you just think, oh, please, no. I wanted to set up a campaign. Panel members are humans too. Treat us like humans, be nice to us, understand what motivates us, what upsets us, work with us, not, don't just hit me with enormous numbers of facts.
I don't know if we've got any questions.
I've got one question in the chat from Lottie, and she's asking about choice of organisation. If your current employer or organisation isn't the best place to do your postdoctoral work, whether that's strategy, expertise, etc., how do you go about contacting and engaging with an alternative institution prior to developing the application?
Yeah, so first of all, quite right, if the institution isn't the right one, that is going to show to the panel, and they will have expected you to have moved to a host that absolutely impacts. Now that's difficult and it isn't necessarily possible, but I have to say that won't fly if you're not at the right host institution. How I think you look to collaborators, you look to your network, where you look to where is the institution that's doing leading cutting edge work in your field that you would like to be part of. Start having those conversations, going back to what I said about preparing early, starting, especially if you're going to be changing institutions, because it's not only where am I best placed for my own development and my science development, there's a lot of practical aspects about that as well. So absolutely do the homework, where is it you would like to have the conversations by potentially going to, and then the work that that would involve. But this has to be the right place for you, if, you know, and to encourage you to be able to be on that trajectory to be a future leader.
What is the cut-off differentiation between early and late advanced NIHR fellowships?
That's it's kind of along a bit of string. You've got within sort of award of PhD to 8 years to apply to the advanced fellowship. So you will get applicants who are very early in their postdoc career, and those who are really quite established. Now, just to reassure people, the panel looks at those separately. So you're not going to be 6 months out of PhD, you're not going to be prepared with someone with 7 years postdoc application. But the cut-offs as such, I'm not really sure I can answer that one in terms of, there's no specific cut-offs. They'll look at you, what you've done. It goes back to what I said about right stage of your career and everything else that you've done. But that's the remit bit in terms of being eligible for the advance. You must hold a PhD, obviously, and you mustn't have more than 8 years postdoc experience, whole-time equivalent. So if you've been working part-time, for example, then obviously that's more than the 8 years. So also be very aware about what your postdoc experience is in terms of WT.
Would the funding allow to undertake some aspects of the research overseas?
Yes. So the international visit can be to do a particular, it may be there's a particular technique or method and you want to go and learn it and use it in your own, or it could be other valuable way of doing it. But increasingly, because of the other end, you know, the rest of the NIHR agenda, which is to encourage global working and collaboration internationally, you could do an aspect of it. But again, I go back to what I said earlier, if it's justified. So, you know, I want to go to Australia and do X because Australia is really lovely to go to. It's not going to fly. It's, I need to go there because I need to do this, and that will help my research in this way and help my personal development. So go back to that justification piece.
I think that's all in the chat for now. If we've got any questions in the room.
Judith, do you want to comment on resubmissions?
Yes.
Because that one crops up. So the kind of NIHR, how the panels now think about, look at resubmissions, when they're encouraged, when they're...
Yeah. Okay, so as I said earlier, you can apply more than once and you can resubmit. Now, absolutely, this isn't about, oh, I didn't get it, so the next round I'll apply again. I would always advise you to take some time, because you will get feedback and you will be expected to really address that feedback. And when you do go again, that's what the panel member will look at. They'll go, oh, right, that person has taken on the advice of the panel, or justified why that advice wasn't possible. I also think you need to develop your CV in that time as well. So when you go back, that you've got more on your CV. And again, 6 months is such a short, you can't publish 10 more papers or whatever it is if you're advanced. So I do think you need to take your time and not to go back immediately. I think I'd also like to bust a little bit of a myth buster in terms of, it used to be people would just almost practically assumed that they would get awarded if they went the next time, but it's not. The application is given the same scrutiny as if it was an original submission, except obviously we know the feedback and how that's happened. So take your time, really address any feedback that you've got, and also look at your own personal development during that time. And I would especially say things like, if you said in your original application, we're going to do a systematic review, this is just an example, maybe at a doctoral level, and you come back again and you're still saying that you're going to start a systematic review, the panel is going to say, you know, you may not have, we wouldn't expect you necessarily to finish it, but we would expect it to be well underway. So don't come back with exactly the same. Show how you've progressed. Because remember, you know, you're trying to tell them how committed and passionate you are to this piece of work and this research. So if you haven't done anything with it in that time, it's not going to be very convincing. Anything else? I guess?
No, just that all of those things I agree with, and it says something about tenacity. So I got knocked back, so actually I just went and started doing it. And this is where I got to it. That the systematic review is a good example. Yeah. That shows people you're really serious about it. and it looks very good. The feedback will usually give you the answer, but it won't be overt. It's a bit like Kremlinology, where work out who was standing next to Brezhnev and what it meant. There'll be sort of coded words and comments about what they liked and what they didn't like, and actually it's deadly serious. So you need to have people help interpret what they're really saying behind all of that, because it will be, in a sense, the least common one is it's you. I mean, that's relatively uncommon in my experience. It will usually be about either the project and its training capacity or the organisational support.
Yeah.
So just interpret it. These aren't throwaway. These are worded very, very carefully, and so get some help in deciphering what it means.
And would you say that the least common one is that it's you? It's the same at the advanced level as a doctoral level, or is it? Do you expect? Is there a higher emphasis?
It's pretty unusual because normally the organisation will have given you that feedback beforehand, because it's got that would be tough, and it's not. You commonly don't see that, certainly for our people. I think that's because we're quite careful at guiding people. There is no CV. Everyone thinks, you've got to have an H index of this, that, and the other. It doesn't work that way at all. It's about much more commitment and all of those things. So what constitutes a good applicant or not is much more sort of fluid than you perhaps might think it is. It's about momentum and trajectory. I mean, you often get people say, I'll do another year and then I'll put the application in because I'll have a couple more papers. Well, they're going to expect more because you've had more opportunity. It's about the extent to which you've done it. And we also know that there are people who get lots and lots of little author papers, because they happen to work in a particular setting where there are lots of papers, they're not really involved in them, versus one really well-crafted piece of work where you've spent 2 years doing it. The panels are much smarter than people think they are at spotting all of that. They really do get this. They look at all of these things and sort of do understand it. Can I ask just a question about organisational support? Okay, because this is starting to creep in a little bit. Now, clearly an organisation that values training and supports the development of people. I mean, we do that with spades. There's a reason why we're all so involved in NIHR. It's because we've got this history of doing it. But the sense that there was an expectation in advanced fellowship in particular that was more in the way of literally matching support. Do you think that's the case, or is it? I guess the worry is that it's easy to write warm words about how much you care about trainees, and my life as dean, I realised how often people didn't mean that. Is there an expectation that the organisation will chip in at advanced fellows level to provide specific support?
I have to say that I don't think I'm the best to answer that. That would be an Eileen one. My sense is that no, that isn't an expectation, but would obviously look very good if that was the case. But I'm afraid I don't know exactly what the panel's thinking in terms of that at the moment. But I would go back to, not in terms of chipping something in, but the detail that's in that host institution is looked at much more closely. I mean, I've been doing this for about 10 years. I was a panel member, then I was the deputy chair and then chair. And the amount of scrutiny now in that was about things like not only what they're going to, how they're going to support the fellow, but it's also what's their approach to EDI, what's their approach to research culture, what is the culture that you're going to go into and work into and is that supported. So anybody who thinks they can get away with a sort of generic host statement is.
And the reason for that was that people would write these formulaic letters about commitment to gender, swan silver, blah, 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 blah. And then all of the egregious examples of people being treated badly were always from organisations who boasted about all of those things. And that was a kind of enough is enough moment. We're going to stop that now. We're going to actually look at these things and take them seriously. And if people then don't provide what they say they're going to do, we're going to pursue them for it.
Exactly. So, and I mean, it's, the panel does not want to set anybody up to fail. That's not going to do anything good. But they don't want to set that person off on a journey in an institution where they're not going to be supported, because that's not good for
I've got two more questions, Judith, here. Is there scope to include a global health element in one of the work packages? For instance, would conducting a multi-country comparison study with the UK as one of the centres be eligible?
All I can say about that is I've never come across it yet. I think at the doctoral level, that might be possibly too ambitious. I mean, we've got plenty of multi-site projects within England, for example, but I've not yet seen one that's internationally. Now, there is obviously the NHIR does have the global arm as well, so it may be that whoever's asking that question might want to have a look at the website around what they fund within the global fellowships and things, but I'm not aware of that as yet.
Can people on permanent academic contracts looking to include some clinical practice into their role to carry out research apply for the advanced fellowship?
So they would have a doctorate or MD, they're staying in a clinical position but want some research time.
So can people in a permanent academic
Oh, sorry.
contract looking to include some clinical practice to carry out the research apply for an advanced fellowship?
Why couldn't you? Because the important thing is that you're in a research institution to do, I think that would be a discussion with the post-clinical side of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, dear, I might have to.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
what you're describing is standard
Yeah.
they're describing is standard practice, but you would need the commitment from the host organisation that they could have an honorary contract to
Yeah.
perform that clinical role. But then NHR would fund it. So yes, but you can't use the fellowship to lever an organisation that doesn't want to host you.
Yeah.
That you have, but that there's a process that you go through.
Yeah.
That's fine. And one of the changes that did come in is the 40% clinical used to only be for doctors and dentists. We
Yeah,
forget
it's
these were relatively recent changes, but that was a profound change because that was discriminatory.
Yeah.
So it's now for all clinical professionals.
But also for social carers.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
enough, yeah.
So practice professionals,
Practice
we tended to use the term.
I was wondering in terms of the difference between the doctoral fellowship and the advanced. At the doctoral level, I have the impression that as part of the training and the scientific apprenticeship, you're doing all of the doing yourself. And at the advanced level, you can cost for some other team members.
Yeah.
What bits of it do you typically see people asking a research assistant or the like
Into
to
the
do?
advanced level.
Yeah.
I mean, you're quite right. We do occasionally see at the doctoral level where there may be some funds put in for a shared resource, whether that's a statistician or something with a lot of justification about why that's needed, but it's a very small element of it. At the advanced level, you're still doing a lot of the doing, but you can include that shared staff, so you could include or part of a research assistant support role, or if it's statistics you need or health economics, you can ask for that at the advanced level. It would have to have a lot of justification at the doctoral level to do that, but it has been done. It has been done.
Transcription stuff is a classic example.
Yeah.
It's not in your interest to spend a lot of time doing that. That's not a learning experience for you, but it's useful at an earlier level to get experience of what it's like.
Yeah.
So it's about maximising your capacity.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Judith?
No.
This is a question from me, from my understanding. So for the fellowships that are partly funded by a charity or another organisation, is the review process and the panel the same, or?
Absolutely
Is
the
there some
same. You
differences?
will have the lead person, it's usually the research director or whatever from the charity, will sit in on the interview for
Right.
those candidates that are relevant to their charity. They don't ask anything because they're there just to observe the procedure, but they would be present.
And would you be adjusting some of your application to talk to that charity as well?
If it's under, so for example, the one that springs to mind, because it's my area of relevance, but also this has been on the panel a few times with me, it's the wellbeing of being with women. I would say you write the application as you would write the application, but clearly look at the remit, again, back to remit of wellbeing of women, make sure you're giving them back what they want, and maybe using some words from their strategy, etc. But I wouldn't start rewriting, you know, you're trying, remember NIHR is going to be the main funder even in the partnership, or indeed, there have been occasions where NIHR paid for all of it. And so I wouldn't write it for NIHR, but make sure you're hitting the remits and strategy of the charity and whatever its research strategy would be, etc. Thank you.
So in my experience of the charitable ones when I was doing it, were really successful because people really got embedded with smaller charities and really felt like they belonged, and there were some sort of real conspicuous successes with it. The industry was much more difficult. Never really worked quite as well, but small charities that could never hope to fund a clinical fellow or somebody, all of a sudden had somebody, and they were co-funding with NIHR. And you're right, the amount that they would contribute was not the main issue.
No.
It wasn't about money, it was about partnership. And some of those were brilliant. And some charities really, Wellbeing in Women, you know, being an example, really saw the opportunity with it. And it's been a real success. It was always geared towards smaller charities. I mean, I don't think British Heart Foundation, that was particularly the right thing to do, you know, but it's those medium-sized charities that really want to be proactive, but they have their people linked in with them.
Okay. There's one more question about the application process and timing, if it's the same in other regions of the UK. I'm not sure if that's a misunderstanding.
Yeah, so the call is national, you know, it's, the call comes out in April and October, that's national, it's nothing to do with being in the Northeast.
Thank you very much for really interesting talk. So firstly, sorry about standing up.
No, that's fine.
So I have applied for an advanced fellowship 2 years ago and got shortlisted for an interview, and the interview was unsuccessful. And I think one of the things that went badly is that I wasn't prepared for the format of the interview, which was, so I got a Zoom link, but I didn't expect that all the panel would be in person with just me here on Zoom.
Yes.
Is there any possibility to know? I think it would help me if I would know about this, what to expect. Because to me it was hard that I didn't see like faces clearly, you don't see the kind of the mimics.
So
is it possible to know in advance?
Yes, you can contact the program managers and confirm with them what we were doing. So up until over COVID, everybody was online. Then we moved the last 2 rounds. We've had the panel in the room and the candidate online. All being well, come November, everyone's in the room. So we are going back to everybody, panel and candidate being in the room. So NHIP did a survey after some of the fellowships, so asked the fellows and also the panels what they wanted. To my surprise, it was quite even, because I'm desperate to get the candidate back in the room. So that's the plan going forward. So, but in advance, if you want to just have that confirmed, just contact the program manager. And that'll be able to confirm that with you.
You'd miss the opportunity for the glorious moment where somebody was doing an interview and in the background was a bloke doing his island.
I haven't personally had any of that on these. But we've had, we've had lots going. We had one time we had the air conditioning going completely mad in the background. We're trying to listen to this person on this. There's lots of technical stuff that can go wrong. It's just not satisfactory for the candidate, and it's not satisfactory for the panel.
Somebody goes back to the dog's mouths and they're interviewing that.
Yes, we've had animals crawl across. But you know, going back, you know, we're all human. Like it's just a bit of a giggle, but if nothing else, and then we move on. So.
Can I ask a question? In a way, when you're starting out, how do you know who is the best person to approach to kind of start discussing what you're doing, where you want to go? How do you kind of almost take that first leap?
Yeah, and it's not easy to sort of cold call on a potential supervisor or mentor, but I suppose I'll talk to your colleagues. I don't know where you're based, but talk to your colleagues to ask their advice in terms of anybody that they know who's working in your area, for example. Speak to other applicants about who they've been supervised about. Look up the university web pages and see who's working in your area. You know, again, do that little bit of homework, and then just send off an email. I mean, none of us mind being approached by someone and saying, I'm not sure about this, could I come and talk to you? Talk to Amy, just talk to all that preparation stage, just talk to everyone, get some ideas and then approach. And it may be that, you've got a few ideas in mind, but actually when you speak to the person, it's clear that they're not, lovely individual, but they're not quite going to bring the expertise that you need. And I think I would encourage you to, don't be afraid to say, actually, maybe this isn't the right opportunity for us to work together, it might be on something else, because the panel is going to scrutinise that supervisory or mentorship, and you don't want to not get something because they don't feel the supervisory team strong enough, and that has happened previously. So yes, it might be a little bit of an awkward conversation with someone that you thought might be a potential supervisor, to then say, actually, my program's work's evolved a bit, I think I need this, it would be lovely to collaborate with you in the future. We've been there, we've all been there, and it's fine, don't worry about things. Get the right people to give you the right support.
Can I ask, do you kind of almost approach anybody within those kind of confines, or do you also have to approach people that particular kind of NIHR endorsed kind of academics?
Well, it's given the remit, which is around applied health research, it's likely people who've got some connection with NIHR. They may not be in the panel, or they may not be, but they're likely to be, their own research is likely to be applied health research and NIHR funded. So, but there's no endorsement as such other than their own expertise in terms of the topic area and their own experience of mentorship and supervising, either doctoral level or advanced level.
I make a lot of introductions to people,
Yeah.
so just get in touch.
We spend our lives
Yeah.
doing that.
Doing the matchmaking.
Between,
Yeah.
us and then, Eileen and Kath Exley, who was also on the panel, if we don't know the answer as to who the right person to talk to is, we know who will know the answer. And people, the thing about training and career development is it's a different ethos to science, which is very competitive. We actually do this because we really care about it. We do this because it matters. And so therefore you want to do the best thing for individuals. So in our kind of, the highest compliment I can pay anybody is that they're a training person, because they get that higher value to it all. So they're always really happy to direct you to not only the people who cover that area, but the people who cover that area who are going to be good people for you to be supervised by or mentored by or whatever, and that's the other bit to it. Just one thing I was going to say about supervision, particularly doctoral level, is you want to hit the middle ground. You don't want a first supervisor supervision working on their own. In fact, the rules don't allow you to have single supervision. You need to have, because that's not going to work. But nor do people want to see Sir Bufton Tufton, Nobel laureate supervising you for half an hour every 3 months amongst his 200 supervisees, because that isn't going to work either. So they're looking for often to have all of your kind of areas of research covered by a member of your team, and then have somebody as the lead one, who's the person who's actually going to fill the paperwork in for your PhD. And if that person's relatively inexperienced, then have a slightly more senior person who's also contributing into that team. So it's about the rightness of the fit, and about 3 or 4 supervisors.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Apologies, I didn't say that. You can have up to 4, I would say. We would have more, both that in terms of your supervision at the doctoral level, but also as your research support. And of course, there's another section of the form which is around collaborations and all that. Other people can be involved in this, they just wouldn't be classed as a supervisor. And the other thing to point out is you have to identify which of the supervisors is the lead supervisor. They do ask for that. But you often would have somebody who's got the topic expertise, and then if you've got, if you've got a program of work that's looking at qualitative, they'd expect qualitative. If you've got a health economics aspect to it, well, you'd have health economics, etc. So you do need to think very clearly about what it is, which areas of support you really feel you need, based on your own experience up to now and expertise. You can have up to 4.
I've got a question about timelines. How much notice do you get if you're shortlisted for interview?
They try to give about 6 weeks, but no more. I think it's quite, once you do hear, it's quite quick turnarounds, it's about 6 weeks.
But the dates for the interview are on the website, aren't they?
Well, they will be for the next round. I'm just thinking what's in my diary. Yes, I've got the next round as well. So the next 2 rounds, I've definitely got dates in my diary, so they'll be there.
Thank you.
Okay. Any final? All good. Anybody online got final questions?
That's good.
One last thing I was going to say is also, you commented about it might be obvious who on the panel is going to be the one that handles it, but you don't write for that person because you may well be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Sorry, it
don't
was more-
write it, don't, only cite that person's research and talk about how marvellous they are, because they will even out the workload on the panel, so.
Yeah. No, I think I was getting, in terms of preparing
Yes.
for the interview, not for writing
Yeah.
the, and as I said, on the day, we try and match, but, as going back to the fact that panel members are humans, maybe they're just not able to come that day for whatever reason, so that would then go to somebody else to be the lead, and they could be somebody who's got absolutely nothing to do with your topic area, but obviously they know enough about it to be able to
My
answer
abiding
questions.
memory of being on that panel is the sheer diversity of stuff that I was asked to
Yeah.
read and assess, and in fact, never hepatology. It's all manner of everything.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Lovely, thank you. Are you happy for us to share your slides?
Yes, I am.
Super, thank you. Stop the recording.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,